I had always been drawn to the ocean's mysteries. Its vastness, its boundless horizon, always fascinated me. The ocean was a place where time seemed to stretch out endlessly, where the laws of the world felt different. But it was also a place that could bring terror and unease, even for those who loved it. That night, the sea revealed its darker side, a side I could never have imagined in my worst nightmares. I remember the storm clearly, how it began as a mere rumble on the horizon, a subtle shift in the air that I barely noticed at first. But within hours, it grew into a beast, a monster that devoured the sky and drowned the world in thunder and rain. The wind howled and screamed through the rigging of the research vessel. The crew scrambling below deck, securing equipment, but I couldn't tear myself away. I stood alone on the deck, staring out at the churning blackness of the sea. The ship creaked and groaned as the waves grew higher, crashing violently against the hull. The sky was black, save for the occasional lightning that illuminated the vastness of the ocean in stark flashes. And through it all, the water seemed to call to me, pulling me in. I had always loved the sea, but now it felt different, darker, more alive, as though it was watching me, waiting for something. Then, in an instant, it happened. A monstrous wave, taller than any I had ever seen, rose from the darkness. The ship was lifted as if it were a mere toy, tossed helplessly in the water's embrace. I had no time to react. The force of the wave was too great, and in a moment of pure terror, I was thrown overboard. The world spun around me, the cold water engulfing me as I sank below the surface. I choked, gasping for air, my mind racing. I fought to stay conscious, to find the surface, but the current was too strong, and the world above seemed impossibly far away. I was drowning, but somehow, through sheer will, I found my way back to the surface. The night sky was above me, but there was no sign of the ship. The storm had swallowed it whole, and I was alone in the vastness of the ocean. I clung to a piece of debris, the remnants of the ship that had once been my only connection to the world. My heart hammered in my chest, the salt water stinging my skin as I struggled to stay afloat. But all around me, there was only the relentless sea and the howling wind. Hours passed. Time seemed to stretch out endlessly. The storm raged on, but I had no control over my fate. I drifted aimlessly, disoriented and fearful, my mind clouded by exhaustion and the salt water that burned my throat. The light of the storm's fury flickered in the distance, but there was no sign of land. I was lost, stranded in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but the cold, indifferent sea for company. And then, when I thought I could take no more, I saw it, a faint light in the distance. At first, I thought I had imagined it, but it was there, glowing faintly in the vast expanse of darkness. My heart leapt with hope. It was a beacon, a sign that there was something out there, something that might save me. Desperation filled my veins, and I paddled furiously toward it. The light seemed to grow brighter as I approached, pulling me in like a magnet. I pushed myself harder, my limbs aching, but I couldn't stop. The light was everything now, my only hope, but as I reached out, the light flickered and vanished. For a moment, I was frozen in confusion. Had I imagined it? I scanned the horizon, but there was nothing. The darkness was all-consuming, and the vast ocean stretched out endlessly around me. No light. No ship. Just the cold, crushing silence. The sea had toyed with me, offering me hope only to snatch it away. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. I forced myself to keep going, my body aching, my mind clouded with exhaustion. I told myself that it had to be real, that I hadn't imagined it, that the light was still out there. I had to believe that. Otherwise, I would have nothing. I drifted for what felt like an eternity, floating in the endless void of the ocean. The waves seemed to mock me, rising and falling, as though the sea itself was playing a cruel game with me. And then, just when I thought I could take no more, I saw the light again. This time, it was closer, shining through the darkness like a star, but as I reached for it, it flickered once more and receded, just out of my grasp. I was caught in a terrible cycle. The light would appear, drawing me in, only to vanish when I was so close to escaping the endless despair of the ocean's grip. It was a cruel game. Each time, I thought I could make it, that I could reach safety, only to be denied. The sea was alive with its own rhythm, its own rules, and I was nothing more than a helpless player in its game. Days blurred into nights. I no longer knew what time it was, or how long I had been drifting. Hunger gnawed at me, my throat dry with thirst, my limbs weak and trembling from the effort of keeping myself afloat. My skin was raw from the salt water, and my mind was slipping into delirium. But still, the light called to me, the only thing that kept me from losing my grip on reality. I chased it, over and over again, my thoughts unraveling, my body failing me. The sea was changing. I could feel it. The water seemed colder now, as though the depths themselves were reaching out to claim me. And beneath the surface, shadows moved. At first, I thought it was my imagination, a trick of the light or the waves, but then I saw them clearly, figures, shifting beneath the water, watching me. Their shapes were distorted, ghostly, their movements smooth and fluid, like something not quite human. They circled me, their forms fleeting in the depths, always out of reach. The whispers began soon after. At first, they were soft, faint echoes carried by the wind. Unintelligible, like a language I couldn't quite understand. But as the days wore on, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to come from all directions at once, swirling around me, filling my head with an unbearable pressure. The words were nonsensical, maddening, but one thing was clear: the sea was speaking to me. It knew me. It knew my fears, my regrets, my every thought, and the shadows beneath the water grew bolder. They no longer hid in the depths, but danced just beneath the surface, their eyes fixed on me. Their presence was suffocating, their gaze unblinking, as if they were waiting for something. I had become part of the sea, I realized. A lost soul, adrift in the endless expanse, forever chasing a light that would never be mine. The ocean was alive, and it was not kind. It was a predator, a force of nature that devoured everything in its path, and I was just another victim. In my final moments, I stopped fighting. I let go of the debris, allowing the water to close in around me. The shadows beneath the surface reached out, their hands cold and skeletal, pulling me down into the depths. The light flickered one last time, far above me, before it vanished, swallowed by the abyss. I had become one with the sea.